But there's all sorts of plagues, these interesting plagues that that really hit Egypt during that time, which I found quite fascinating. And then you come across these two fellas, right? You know, even in the cartoons, quite funny. But the magicians in the story, or where the story goes, you know, during the Pharaoh's time, there was many magicians and many, you know, superstitious, you know, rituals. Maybe not so dissimilar today, right? With people who can predict or apparently predict the future, and they can do all kinds of astronomical, you know, BS basically, right? And we all know it's untrue largely. And these these characters play a quite interesting role. So the magicians of the pharaoh almost kind of give him that false illusion, you know, or false dichotomy, even, you know, of believing that he is this, you know, the central figure, that he is God himself, you know. So they kind of do all kind of weird, you know, magic and visualize that magic in some form of illusion to the public, to hopefully, you know, instill, you know, the false confidence in the leader or the leadership of the time, to assume that the data is okay, right? You know, no, you're still the god, right? Continue as you go, and the plays go on. And so these magicians play this really important part of what I would call the data disillusioners, right? The people who are disillusioned by data, who are not really taking much heed in what is actually observable truths, you know, of the time. So what next then? You know, eventually they get to the sea, the crossing between the Nile, and they have a fascinating event where they are, you know, met with some level of disturbance, right? Either it's data or it's, you know, all belief, and much of our what we believe as human beings is rooted in some form of belief system. So what we do, sorry, what I should say is what we do and how we behave in large contexts is largely rooted in how we believe what we see, what we observe, what we touch, what we smell, what we hear through our senses. So belief, even in data and in metrics and in agility, is also rooted in some form of belief system. Not saying faith or religion, but you surely you believe that 1+1 = 2. Therefore, you believe the data says, you know, 2 story points or whatever, right? So belief is a natural, organic, you know, makeup in complex adaptive systems, and we are indeed, you know, in the lead and agile, you know, worlds, or even teams and teams of teams and organizations. We are in that context of believing, you know, not necessarily what we see sometimes, and we have to have some level of depth in our other senses to really, corroborate the evidence with what we believe, because what we believe is just not good enough, right? I believe that 6 3 points doesn't mean anything.
Haroon, are the slides supposed to be being presented?
Oh yeah, they are.
Because I know on my screen I can see your initial. It's not in presenter mode, but I can see your initial one, but it's still on the let my people flow slide, so it's not.
Oh right, thank you for mentioning that. So maybe I need to do something on my side. Apologies. So I need to. I thought I was on presenter mode. Sorry. Here's me thinking I've gone through 4 different presentations. Okay, you're not.
That's okay.
So thanks for the feedback. So what do I need to do? Let me go to my PowerPoint presentation and see what's gone on here. Maybe I need to just go to desktop view and just maybe do it that way. If I do. Okay, so I think I need to press this button.
Thank you. I was about ready to let him know.
Cool. So if I do share screen now, what screen? If I just do desktop, maybe that might be easier. Can you see a different? Cool. Well, luckily you only missed 2 different really cool images, right? You saw. I was just showing the slavery of the Jews by the Pharaoh, and then these 2 fellows here, the magicians and the Prince of Egypt. But there's many more magicians, as we know, in the Pharaoh's team or team of teams, you could say, who were disillusioned and they were driven by different motivations, not by obviously clearly telling the truth, because they'd be killed or there'd be some form of ramifications around that. And this is the last slide that I was just showing you, which is that this partitioning of the Nile, as is mentioned in the story. But there's a sense of belief there with the people that they've seen a number of different observable truths, i.e. the 10 plagues or the 9 plagues, depending on which book you read. And I won't go into the plagues just now immediately, but there's some of the plagues, just to mention a couple, is the Nile ran red like blood. there was locusts, there was some form of natural disaster, etc., etc. But then they come to this kind of this epic point of crossing what we now know as modern day Egypt and going into Israel and going into the Israelite lands. And there must have been some form of fear there for these people, right? They've just left slavery, and they're being marched and hunted down by the Pharaoh and some of his key kind of key men, really. And then they obviously when the waters depart, they go through quite not comfortably, but probably with some level of discomfort still, because they can see these horses and these chariots behind them trying to run through the Nile as well. And then the story goes that these folks survive, and the chariots and the Pharaoh do not survive, right? That's the story. So why did I choose a story, Let My People Flow? I feel that organizations across the globe, given the current pandemic as well of COVID-19 since last year, about January, March, whatever, have realized that it's just not good enough, of telling people what to do. We can't enslave people. And I like to use this extreme case of the case of Moses, who fights and challenges the status quo with consultation and coaching and asking really interesting questions to the Pharaoh. It didn't just happen that they just had 10 plagues and then they went off on their jollies to Israel, to the wilderness, and then on to Israel via Daniel and other and for David as well, many years later. But the story goes that there was a number of consultation moments, and in agility we might call them time box moments, right? Conversations, where there's some level of discomfort, but no one's getting killed just yet. Maybe they're getting tortured, probably, yeah. Most corporations are torturing people, in different ways by the performance review plans that should come out every year and poor, people who are in permanent staff, in permanent, employments, they're having to suffer this enslavement, right? As Deming and others may call it. Maybe I'm quoting an extreme version of what philosophers before me have spoken about. But I see no difference really, in terms of how people are treated, how human beings are treated in organizations, and where metrics are being used to really hurt people, or there's should we say, an ignorance about what the data even is. So hence this talk is really focused on that, and it addresses that point and really challenges the status quo and leadership and execs about this stuff. A good friend of mine, Tobias May, I hope he doesn't mind me quoting it, he mentioned that executive teams and leadership teams and the people at the top don't really last long in organizations. Just look at your top leadership. They're probably there 2, 3, 4, they're really lucky 5 years, maybe in public sector longer, right? But they're not there very long compared to the should we say, the general employee who's hardworking, focused, collaborative. I'm not saying executives are not. Executives are also those things as well. Just making the differentiation between the number of years in service that a employee, someone at the bottom of the rank, really compares with those at the top. And we need to be really careful, and sometimes maybe not that careful, but we need to show our mercy to those at the bottom of that triangle, all right, at the bottom of that pile, who are been in that organization for many years, decades sometimes, right? And I've been with many clients over the last 6-7 years where employees have been in that organization for 10, 15, 20 years. Obviously the millennials and the ex millennial class, whoever it is right nowadays, right, they're changing that culture of having a job for life and the rest of it, which is fantastic, by the way, because it's now making organizations competitive in the way that they treat their people. And we need more of that. We need less pharaohs, we need less dictatorships, we need less command and control, less micromanagement, and allow and enable teams to flourish and really self-organize.